Howdy, I'm Brian Triplett, Red River County Extension Agent with today's Northeast Texas A&M AgriLife Extension live in the field. Today we're going to talk about grass and grass-like plants that you might find growing in a pasture near you. Now there are lots of different plants out there that look like grasses, and it's easy to get them confused. So today we're going to share with you a little story or a little saying that you can say to yourself to help you remember what's a grass and what's not a grass. And that little saying goes like this: sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses are hollow. What have you found? If you can remember that, when you're out in the field looking around, you can sort your way through quite a few of the grass and grass-like plants, or gramonids as the botanists like to say. All three of these groups are broadly similar. They all have long, narrow, parallel veined leaves, and they have inconspicuous or not very showy flowers. Looking at the stem structure of these plants will generally help you to separate one from the other. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about these gramonids or grass-like plants. We're going to start with the true grasses, the Poaceae. Agronomically and financially, they are probably one of the most important families of plants that we have. Our corn, our cereal grains like our corn, our wheat, our rice, all of those are in the grass family, as well as the grasses that we feed to our livestock, our Bermudas, Dahias, Johnson, and even this Dallas grass here. Now, as we go back to our poem, when we look at grasses, the stems of grasses are almost always hollow, and they're going to be round or sometimes a little bit flattened. So on a grass or a plant you think it's a grass, if you snap the stem open and look down through the stem, oftentimes it's going to be round. Where the leaves come off or start on the plant, you'll often see some swollen places that we call nodes. And that's another way that look and tell if it's a grass. If you have these swollen joints that are called nodes along the stem, that can give you another indication that it's a grass. And also, the leaves on grasses come off in two dimensions. So if you hold a grass plant in your hand, the leaves are going to be coming off opposite each other or alternate each other, one or the other, but they're going to come off basically on two sides of the plant. Next plant in our grass and grass-like plants that we're going to talk about is the sedge family, or the Cyperaceae. This family is not quite as diverse as the grasses, but there are over 5,000 species in this family. Sedges typically like to live in wetter areas, areas that have heavier soils that stay moist longer periods of time, and they also like to live in areas that typically have kind of poor fertility. Now, the stem on a sedge is going to be solid instead of hollow like a grass, and they're typically going to be triangular in shape. So whereas our grasses were round, our sedges are going to be triangular, which is why we sometimes will say that sedges have edges. If I take this flower stalk on this globe sedge here and I roll it in my fingers, I'll definitely feel sides to the stem, and I know that it's triangular by the way that it feels, and I know that I have a sedge here. There are no joints where the leaves come off of the plant, and while I said that grasses earlier have two leaves that come off on one on either side of the stalk, sedges, being triangular in shape, will have leaves that come off of the plant in three directions, three sides of the plant. So if I hold this plant like this, you may be able to see it. I've got a leaf coming off this way, a leaf coming off the plant this way, and a leaf coming off the plant this way. So I have leaves coming off of the plant on three different sides. That is another good indication that you're looking at a sedge. The last family that we're going to talk about today are the rushes, the Juncaceae. Now earlier when I talked about the sedges, I said that there were a little over 5,000 members of this family. With the rushes, there's only about 450 species in the world. They like to grow where it's wet, and they also like to grow in soils that have poor fertility. One thing about rushes is that they are often seen as kind of like an evergreen plant. They stay green pretty much year round. Although most of them don't grow much in the winter, they'll still be green out in your pasture. Now, like the sedge, the rushes have a solid stem, but their stems are mostly going to be round. Now, our grasses have round stems. I said that earlier, but where the leaves come off on a grass, that node there is often swollen. You won't see a swollen node on a rush, and the leaves on a rush are very narrow, almost leathery in appearance, and then they're often kind of rolled up on themselves. So kind of rolled up and very narrow and kind of evergreen and leathery looking. And that's a very good indication that you're looking at something that we call a rush. So, in conclusion, we'll go over that poem again, and maybe you'll remember it the next time you're out in the pasture. And that little saying goes something like this: sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses are hollow. So what have you found? Thanks for listening to our Northeast Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Live in the Field for today. I'm Brian Triplett, Red River County Extension Agent. Have a great afternoon.